Hello and welcome to a brand new style of presentation for a FieldNets meeting as such. This is an online presentation and I've chosen to talk about insect metamorphosis, the ultimate mystery, and it is an interesting subject because it is one of the last great mysteries in natural science. Now, I've consulted lots of books and websites on the subject and have yet to find any really comprehensive and really good pictures or photos of this whole process, or at least the meat of the process in action. Even detailed descriptions of what goes on during the change from caterpillar to butterfly are rare. One particular book, which looked promising, called Metamorphosis, published in 2015, talks about chemistry, but not from the sort of real chemical analysis point of view, but more about, and I quote, "for the wonder of it all, and to marvel at evolution's relentless ability to pull rabbits out of hats." So really this presentation is one that shares that wonder and gives you at least some extra information that you can add to your store of insect knowledge. So a quick definition, as these things always appear to have. Metamorphosis is the process of growth from an egg to an adult of some classes of animals, which includes a sudden change in form at the adult stage. Metamorphosis is a feature of a number of classes of animals, including amphibians, crustaceans, mollusks, echinoderms, and of course insects. So let's explore a little bit of the process, and there are three basic types of metamorphosis, and the first is incomplete or hemimetabolism, and this applies to dragonflies, and damselflies, they're all up the top there, mayflies and stoneflies, so all of these different orders, and they all just happen to have aquatic larvae. So that might be a clue as to how incomplete metamorphosis works. I'll explain in a little minute. The next one is gradual metamorphosis, and this applies to the true bugs, cockroaches, earwigs, crickets and grasshoppers. Fleas, I've already talked about fleas, that was in the next thing. Aphids and mantids, of course. And gradual metamorphosis is also known as porometabolism, P-A-U-R-O metabolism. And again, I'll explain a little bit more later. And finally, complete metamorphosis, which applies to beetles, butterflies and moths, the caddis flies, fleas, flies, there they are, lacewings, scorpion flies, and of course the ants, wasps and bees, the Hymenoptera. Complete metamorphosis is also known as holometabolism. Hollow as in whole. So let's have a look at incomplete metamorphosis. So the illustrations there are of the items in the list. So there are eggs stored there on the tail of the female at the moment. They'll be laid on a piece of usually aquatic vegetation or reed, something like that. Then there's the nymph stage. Nymph, or another name is instar, or in this particular case in dragonflies and damselflies, is the naiad, however you'd like to pronounce it, and of course the adult or imago. The nymph is a generic name for a juvenile insect undergoing incomplete metamorphosis. The instar, the word instar, describes each stage of development of a nymph. For instance, damselflies go through up to 12 instars before molting for the final time to become a fully winged and reproductive adult. Naiad is the special name given to nymphs of the order Odonata, that is dragonflies and damselflies, as well as the mayflies, which is in the order Ephemeroptera. Their nymphs are aquatic and they spend their instar stages underwater. And just a little test, can you tell which one of these nymphs is a dragonfly larva and which is a damselfly larva? Well, the difference is in the breathing apparatus. The damselflies have external lungs, and the blue arrow there shows where those external lungs are on the very end of their body. They can use that for breathing air. The dragonfly larvae, which are always slightly bigger, don't have those appendages, lung appendages. They're actually internal. And I'll acknowledge the source of those images. They're on Dragonfly Woman online, so check that out if you wish. Molting. Before we go any further, I'd like to explain a little bit about the process of molting, because, as I just mentioned, insects the nymphs undergo a series of molts. Just a little bit of an explanation, I think, is required. And I'll show you some video of this particular caterpillar molting a little bit later. There's a brain hormone called ecdysone, E-C-D-Y-S-O-N-E, and that's responsible for the molting in insect larvae. The ecdysone signals the creation of a new exoskeleton, also known as the cuticle or skin, which is formed under the old one. Must be very uncomfortable. Ecdysone also triggers the splitting of the old cuticle, which usually it happens at the head end. The latest instar pushes its way out of the old skin and finds that their new skin embodies any new developmental features that were scheduled to appear. And that's all set up through their DNA. Another secretory organ called the corpus allatum produces a hormone called juvenile hormone, which remains in the bloodstream for all of the juvenile stages, the larval stages. And as the final instar stage is achieved, the corpus allatum stops, or at least reduces the production of juvenile hormone, and prompts the transition to the pupal stage, a little bit like adolescence. Further reduction of the juvenile hormone allows the adult version to emerge under the continued control of ecdysone, but it produces the latest adult developments. So we'll see a little bit more of that in a moment. Let me carry on with gradual metamorphosis. And this is typical of a number of insects, including the bugs, cockroaches, earwigs, etc., as I've mentioned. To illustrate the process, here are the 7 stages of development in the brown stink bug. There's the eggs here, a little cluster, the 5 instars, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the fully winged and reproductive adult. These bugs are in the Hemiptera, and you can see here the half, what looks like the half a wing, where it's just a hard shell and then a membranous part of the wing. Anyway, gradual metamorphosis sees the instars as just smaller versions of the adult, and you can see that quite clearly here. They're just smaller adults. They look virtually the same. Early molts may show changes in colour and outward structure, such as more prominent spines, and changes to the shape of the exoskeleton. But the last molt into the adult produces the wings and the reproductive organs. This is an ootheca, or an egg case, and it's from a cockroach, an Australian cockroach as a matter of fact, and it can contain up to 24 eggs. The female often carries it around while embryos are developing and will then deposit the ootheca in a crack or under bark prior to hatching. 5 instars develop over a period of about, between 6 and 12 months. It's quite a long time for an insect. This next shot shows 3 of the instars, and they are instar 1, 3 and 5. And this is the one just before it it changes into the adult. The Australian cockroach is Periplaneta australasiae, and there's the adult with the full wings. But underneath those wings, it's virtually the same as its former instars. And briefly, in the crickets and grasshoppers, here's a little grasshopper with tiny little wing buds here, which are in one of the last stages or last instars. And here's the adult. Very similar in terms of the structures. The antennas aren't as long. The development of the hind leg is pretty much there too. But there's certainly nothing like the length of wing. But they're basically the same. So in orthopterans, they can have between from 4 up to 13 instars. Grasshoppers like this typically have 6 instars. Crickets can go through 10. Quite a lot of changes. So let's talk about the stages of complete metamorphosis. We have eggs. We have the larva, which can be known as a caterpillar, a grub, or a maggot, depending on the family that's involved. The order that's involved. We also have the pupa, which is a new stage, very important stage in complete metamorphosis, because that's where the completeness comes from. And of course the imago, or the adult. Metamorphosis has several definitions in the dictionary, and only one of them refers to the dramatical biological change from egg to adult. The others describe a process of radical change as if by supernatural means. Indeed, the process is a mystery because it occurs inside a protective covering. That's the chrysalis. And until the 17th century, it was perceived as a purely supernatural phenomenon. A German woman, Maria Sibylla Merian, was the first to really explore the process, as she reared eggs of butterflies and moths through all the stages to adult. And her focus at first was on the silkworm, which is illustrated here in one of her fantastic paintings. These are all watercolour paintings as well. She observed and recorded what was until that time the miraculous change. This is one of her early paintings, as I said. She painted hundreds of wonderfully lifelike renderings of many, many species of butterfly, flies, beetles, moths, crickets, and their food plants, as well as reptiles and birds from Europe, South America in particular, where she visited for a year or so in the Dutch colony of Suriname. And you can see the various stages of silkworm caterpillar, from egg to tiny larva, slightly larger larva, even larger larva, and then the pupation. So here's the pupa inside the cocoon, pupa inside the cocoon because it's a moth, and then the cocoon cracking, the pupa cracking open, and the adult emerges. Not sure whether this is a male and a female or just a different stage of emergence. Anyway, that's Marianne. Eggs. Let's have a look at some eggs. There's 6 examples of eggs here, and I probably could tell you where they came from, but it doesn't matter. Many eggs are laid, but few hatch. They're often hidden away so that predators can't or will have a harder time finding them. They're often laid in clusters like this, but will also be laid singly on tiny stalks. And I guess that's a strategy by some insects to ensure that the survival of their eggs, if they're just one of them placed here and there. But as you can see, there are some fantastic shapes and patterns and structures which are quite mind-boggling, and often they are very, very small. Lots of different shapes and sizes. Let's go here to the larva, also known as a grub or a maggot or a caterpillar, depending on what insect we're talking about. The larva goes through a number of growth stages and molts, and the first meal is often the egg case. We'll see that in a second. Some larvae are carnivorous, such as beetles or lacewings and wasps, while others are herbivorous, such as butterflies and moths. After molting, the larvae are larger and may have different features such as spines, colour spots, etc. But the body shape and form is essentially the same. The larvae generally have a mouth, a gut, and an anus, and they are designed primarily for eating and growing. Their main senses are taste and smell, and they may have keen food preferences as well, even to the stage where if their preferred food is removed and other food is supplied that they don't prefer, they will die rather than eat the other food. The larvae also have 6 legs, but many have additional prolegs. You can see the 6 legs of the ladybird here and the 6 legs of, well, at least 3 of them, of the lacewing larvae. But here are the 3 legs of the caterpillar here, the emperor gum. But here are the prolegs, 4 sets. These help them to get around, and the prolegs are hydraulically powered. That is, the creature pumps body fluid into them to expand them, and then once positioned on a surface, say a twig, the fluid's removed and the structure tightens. The prolegs are not jointed like the normal legs. They mostly occur in the larvae of Lepidoptera and Hymenoptera, the wasps and bees, etc. Some larvae also have caudal legs, and these are the caudal legs here at the very end. It's the caudal end, right at the end of the abdomen. And these are used to grip branches, etc., in the same way as the prolegs. But they're also important appendages for particularly Lepidopteran larvae because they form the hook on which the pupal case hangs. So I'd like to just zip over to here we go, an illustration of molting. And here's a hawk moth, I think. And let's just have a bit of a look. You can see the amount of effort that is required for this particular caterpillar to shed its skin. You can just see here the new head, and oh, there's a brand new colour emerging. 6 legs there, right at the very front, and then the prolegs, and there he is. And he's going on an eating spree. So that's, oh, actually I should show some more. Whoops. Highly unprofessional. I'm going to the 1 minute stage about here. And again, I'd just like you to see the amount of effort that's required for this little guy to shed its skin and emerge as a larger pupa. A larva. This is one of the later instars, and he will change colour very quickly into this sort of reddy pink. That's probably the final instar. If I now go to this stage, I'll stop it there and we'll watch that in a second. We've discussed the larva. Now let's look at the pupa. The final molt is into a pupa. In the case of butterflies, this stage is known as the chrysalis. Here are two chrysalis there. And in the case of moths, it's called a cocoon. There's two cocoons there. The pupae have a hard protective outer covering, and in the cocoon there can be layers of silk, as you can see there, either on the outside of the cocoon or actually mixed in with the case material. Some species of butterfly have a hanging chrysalis, like this one, which are positioned where they are positioned, upside down, and the caudal leg is basically here, stuck to the branch. Other species will have their attachment here, bottom, and they'll be in an upright position, held in place by a saddle of silk. So just a little loop of silk around there. The head's at this end. The style of chrysalis can be diagnostic for the identification, and I think we'll find Andy will give us some information about that a little later on. Each molt, as I said, as we've seen, requires considerable effort on the creature, and it uses up a lot of energy in the process. The pupal stage, though, is known as a diapause stage, where the development of the larva is halted and metabolism is reduced. Let's very quickly have a quick squiz at the effort involved in creating that pupal case. Remember, this is ectosign. He's just making the cocoon there, but it's actually been opened for the purposes of illustration. Here's more wriggling and struggling, and the ectosign has actually created the shell of the adult. You can see here some eyes and antenna, and just stop it there for a sec, and the proboscis here. So this is just the shell of the adult form. The caterpillar itself is still, the form has changed, but the internal workings of this creature is still a caterpillar. It just has this fleshy hood here, which will turn into the adult. So we can see some various changes in colour over time. This may take a week or so, a couple of weeks in most cases for butterflies and moths. And then once the metamorphosis has completed, the adult emerges. And again, it's quite a struggle. Lots of pushing and energy consumed there. There's the adult. I'll stop it there. Because this is the stage where the most fabulous and mysterious thing happens. Oh, I can't stress this enough. This is the amazing thing about it. Oh, yes, I've done that. Here is another of Marianne's paintings showing the stages of the life of a silk moth, which is different from a silkworm. This is a silk moth with distinctive yellow and black caterpillars, and includes the food plant, Erythrina fusca, a coral tree from South America. And during the last stage of metamorphosis, which is called pupation, get this, the organs and the tissues of the animal are completely broken down, and then reconstituted to form the new structures of the adult. So in the first few days, the larva is reduced to a fluid containing what are known as imaginal cells, so after imago, the adult. So there's nothing there except a soup, with cells in it. These cells control the changes that will produce the new adult structures. Now, as we saw in the molting video, that the shell is there, the image, I guess, of the adult exists at the very start of pupation, but the actual bodily cells aren't there. So during this process, the mouth and digestive tract are remade, the eyes and antennae are remade, the wings, reproductive organs, and most of the brain and its chemistry are remade or indeed created. New hormones and new pheromones are created for the adult form to use and respond to, and these are hormones and pheromones that the larvae did not have. Let's move on to the famous monarch butterfly, which is studied a lot because the chrysalis becomes transparent in the later stages of the change. But of course, while the chrysalis is closed up here and very mysterious, that's where all of the interesting chemical changes and mysterious changes occur, which I can't show you. It's quite frustrating. Metamorphosis involves, get this, the complete rearrangement of the insect's body tissues and organs to form the adult. It's completely rearranged. I'm not surprised it doesn't hurt. It probably does. These are fundamental cellular and even molecular changes. It's pure science fiction, although it is fact. It's like something out of Star Trek, where people are teleported from place to place by having their molecular structure disassembled in place A and then reassembled in place B. It's fascinating stuff. Here is a British painted lady butterfly, Vanessa Carduo. It's related to our own painted lady, Vanessa Kershaw, as it emerges from the chrysalis. So the winged adult spends some time pumping fluid into the wings and antenna and other parts before it's ready to assume its new life. It can be a very vulnerable stage for insects. I think we've got some video of the hawk moth that we saw caterpillarizing and then pupating, and here it is emerging from its pupal case, and just in the time lapse there you can see the wings expanding as it pumps fluid into them, and it's quite a fascinating sight. It also pumps fluid into the proboscis so it forms its right shape, and the antenna and the legs are all functioning beautifully. There you go. Thanks very much to Dodo on YouTube for that. In the course of insect metamorphosis, the reassembling turns one animal into a different animal. It's the DNA that controls the rapid changes of cells from one sort to another, from skin to wings, from simple eyes to compound eyes, from spots to eyes. The eyes here. From chewing mouth parts to the straw-like sucking proboscis. Remember, this is the same species. Or from stripes to waves. This is a Cactoblastus moth. So it took quite a few years and numerous demonstrations to prove that this process actually took place. That Mother Nature didn't simply wave a magic wand and the adult appeared in a puff of smoke. But that is the wonderful thing about metamorphosis. It still looks supernatural, even though scientists understand the process very well. And finally, a couple of other illustrations from Marianne showing the eggs, the larva in different stages of development, and then the pupa and the adult. Even a fly here showing some stages of the fly. And at this stage I'd ask for questions, but I'm not going to be able to hear them or answer them directly. So if you'd like to comment, send me an email, and if you've got questions you can do the same or ring me up. Thank you very much for watching this presentation online on insect metamorphosis, and I'm sure if you think it's been successful, then we'll continue to present this way, at least for the foreseeable future. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.